is ingredients for success. And I've been thinking about the ingredients to some of those great desserts we had today and how to recreate them. And that's really what it's all about. It's been very interesting to be here at this moment in time. Because I think if we would have had this conference even 3 years ago, you wouldn't have heard the common themes that we're hearing today, which are all about collaboration, partnerships, policy, funding and finance, all of those enabling frameworks, which now that we've had some experience on the ground of trying to create this great transition, we can start to think about what are those ingredients for success. Not only what are they, but how do you mix them together? And who are the cooks that you need in the kitchen? And what roles can they play in order to make this happen? So today I'm joined by a wonderful panel who are going to talk to us about those ingredients. Natacha from the city of Montreal. Just give a wave, I'm not doing it in order. Benoit from Cycle Capital. Georgia from Project Zero, Synergy Foundation. And Erik from Cascades. So I'm going to ask each of the panelists to share a little bit about who they are, where they've been working, what they've been doing, and then take about 10 minutes, and each of them will focus in on one of those special ingredients that we need for the transition to a circular economy that also creates the important climate action and biodiversity action that we need. So with that, I'm going to ask Benoit to start.
Absolutely, thank you. Thanks for setting that up. Thanks for obviously hosting this event. The circular economy is in many ways, I would say, a throwback to what the environmental movement was all about 30, 40, 50 years ago. And in this day and age of focusing on the climate imperative, for one, often governments, private sector, industry are focusing on great things, such as the electrification of the transport system, ways by which to reduce CO2 emissions, and so on. And often I find the circular economy is the great forgotten vector of the environmental movement. So we're quite pleased that we're focusing collectively here on that segment of the economy, or the economy of the future, right? The economy that needs to become circular or more circular as we move forward collectively. So it's great to be here with my fellow panelists. So in terms of what this is about or what it means to Cycle Capital is a venture capital fund focused on the environmental imperative, and has been in operations for, I'm going to say, more than 12 years today. Is one of the original environmental VCs in Canada, continues to be, and I'm happy to say that there's a growing number, or the venture community has been focusing on the environment across the land, from Vancouver to the Halifax and Newfoundland, of course. So, and in this specific instance, I represent the latest fund of Cycle Capital, which is the Circular Innovation Fund. Guess what? Drum roll, focused on the circular economy. We weren't that original, there's all kinds of ways by which funds sometimes like to market themselves, leap innovation, innovation partners, and all that great jazz and all that stuff. And so in our case, we decided to simply name the fund what it's all about. So, and what's interesting, and I think it's important to appreciate that as well, it's a fund that saw the light of day by the private sector coming together, industry coming together, and more specifically in Europe, deciding that for their specific organizations, and in our case, the Circular Innovation Fund, with the help of Cycle Capital, and with the help of another fund that I'm going to name in a few seconds, was approached by L'Oréal Cosmetics. And L'Oréal, obviously, I don't need to do a great introduction about what L'Oréal is all about. But that being said, it's one of the what I would call the great responsible corporates globally, that has decided, for all the right reasons, to de-risk and to transform its own supply chain in the cosmetics industry to achieve net zero objectives in 2030 and in 2050. So that's how this fund came into being. L'Oréal approached Cycle Capital, based in Montreal. I guess I didn't say that. Said, how could we collaborate and work together? So here's an interesting word, collaboration. I think it's a key piece of the journey that we're on collectively. And said, we want to set up a fund that would, help us, L'Oréal, transform the supply chain, the cosmetics space specifically, the compounds, the materials that go into their products, but also the packaging, right? So everything that is in the business of delivering their end product or their product to end consumers in the B2C model that they have. And, the conclusion of this discussion was, you should look at ways to invest globally. And the initial thought, and this is an interesting one I think I need to share with you, is L'Oréal's initial thought was, we're a big corporate, we're massive, we want a fund that's going to focus on our industry only and to transform what we're all about. And they came to the table with 50 million euros to the table and said, we're going to set up this fund. And Cycle said, well, why don't we partner with you and use your desires, your ambitions, and your objectives to recruit other investors or like-minded industrials and bring new investors to the table that also are looking to transform their supply chain, impact objectives, and are looking to transform the economy of tomorrow, right? So that's what we set out to do with L'Oréal. We partnered with a fund as well in Paris called Demeter Ventures. And together, we manage this fund. So it's a $165 million venture fund. So that's a critical piece of the equation. It's a technology-focused fund focused on the circular economy. We invest in Europe. We invest in North America. We invest in Canada, of course. We have invested in Canada. And one of our portfolio companies, I think presented earlier this morning, Jason Robinson of Evoco, was part of the agenda. So focused, of course, in that specific technology, for that specific technology on advanced materials, plant-based polyurethane. So looking to transform, and often, we're looking to find ways to reduce our reliance, our collective reliance on the petrochemical industry. So that was one of the ways by which we decided to invest in Evoco, and we're happy as investors supporting Jason. So this is the fund's about finding ways to accelerate the adoption of technology, transform industry across multiple sectors, as I said, beyond the cosmetics industry. So some of our investors are impact investors or have an impact mindset. Some are in the renewable space. Some of our investors are in Europe. Some of them are in North America. And we're looking at ways to introduce in the marketplace, typically, products that will have a lesser reliance on natural resources, will typically also, often 9 times out of 10, it implies reducing CO2 emissions, reducing waste material across multiple industries, across multiple feedstocks. And in our case, and that goes back to the foundation of Cycle Capital, we're also looking at one of our metrics. We're an impact fund, as I said. One of our metrics is diversity, gender balance across management of these companies that we invest in. So that's also a key metric for us. So we're about return, and I'm not going to preach that gospel too much of venture returns and so on and so forth. But what's important to remember is this fund saw the light of day through the European Union's way of defining what an impact fund is about. See, this is a word you'll see and you hear a lot these days in 2023. Impact funds, we're going to do good, and collectively, we're going to do good collectively. Do good, again, do good. So I think there's one way, there's a little bit of greenwashing in 2023. ESG is sometimes bandied around as sort of the right acronym for the right people at the right time. That being said, in our case, we have a fiduciary duty to report on these metrics I mentioned earlier. We have 17 metrics of sustainability. of circular economy principles by which we will invest in companies like Evoco, track their performance, financial and environmentally basis as well, and report on the good that we do collectively with those entrepreneurs. So that's what circular innovation is all about. This is, one of the economic agents or ways by which we can collectively, through our dollars, our investments, our partnerships, we can help shape the economy of tomorrow. It's not the only, right? It's not the only way to do this. VCs work with industry, work with investors, work with government. Regulation as well is a key piece of the equation. And regulation will be a necessary requirement for some of these principles and products to see the light of day and scale at the right scale to be sustainable. So in a nutshell, that's the story.
That's terrific. Thank you. And definitely one of the enablers that we've all been talking about is the need for funneling capital into this work. And what I find really impactful, that's a pun on words, is your idea of having very clear goals and objectives around impact and reporting on it. And the idea of having a framework in which that works for both you as a venture capital investor and the companies and the investors. I'm interested, though, in what you were saying around one company was the first mover, and then you had a conversation, it sounds like, to bring others along and to help them think about, okay, if we want system change, we've got to think beyond our own supply chain and value chain. How difficult was that conversation? Was it a big leap for L'Oréal to think in that way, or could they see the
benefit of expanding the complexion of actors in the play? Yeah, definitely. So initially, sometimes corporates are very, these are our objectives, and this is what's good for our industry, and of course, they're doing it for the right reasons, but also it's, I'd say, the consumer of today is looking to see in their corporates and their products, or the manufacturers or producers of the products that we buy every day, they're looking for that level of responsibility. So at the onset, to your point, there was a little bit of resistance, or there's a little bit of, are we sure? And I can't speak on their behalf, but I mean, I saw the look on their faces. And it was one of, well, which other industries, like-minded industries, how do we define like-minded industries? And at the end of the day, the whole thing is if collectively we as citizens, we as an economy, or integrated economies globally, are going to make a difference or accelerate and make this a reality, the circular economy that is by collaborating from the get-go. So they said, okay, let's do this. Let's open the fund. And we recruited other investors in Europe, in North America, some of which are, a company called Masonite, which is a doors and windows manufacturer, public company in the US, has nothing to do with cosmetics, but similarly have sustainability, circularity objectives for their product lines and looking for composites materials that will reduce the impact and the footprint of their products. So we all agreed, L'Oréal agreed, and it became the fund of many. And the many are now investors. The many are part of our industrial expert committee. So we review opportunities collectively, and we have cosmetics folks, we have industrial scale-up folks, we have materials people, and we bring the right opportunities to the table. And sometimes it's a packaging opportunity, sometimes it's a advanced material that's looking to transform a specific industry, sometimes it's a fashion, garment, textile opportunity, sometimes it's biomass transformation. And the whole point is sometimes those investments are beneficial to the investors directly. Sometimes they're not. They're just the way by which they go about it will be beneficial to the greater collective, which is all of us and countries around the globe. So here you go.
That's terrific. Yeah, and I think we're going to come back to that again and again, the coalition of the willing and the many as being key to this. Natacha, tell us about what's happening at the City of Montreal, because a perspective from government and from cities is going to be really important in the transition of the future.
Yeah, thank you. I'm very glad to be with you today to share a bit how Montreal intends to accelerate the deployment of the circular economy on its territory. Because like you said, in my opinion, I really think that the contribution of cities are essential to act where the market and the ecosystem alone cannot. So like other big cities, Montreal has set itself ambitious targets for the ecological transition, such as to be carbon neutral by 2050 and zero waste by 2030. And to achieve that, we think that we are counting on a very 180-degree shift towards a more greener and inclusive economy, and in particular by supporting the circular economy, because we think that to achieve those economical and environmental growth, we have to go further than just thinking about the GHG reduction emission, and also think about preserving our ecosystem and resources. So in Montreal, it is the economic development department that drives the circular economy, and why. I will just give you some numbers, you will see why. Montreal, it's a population of 2 million, it's about 1 million jobs and 64,000 business establishments. So it's really, in short, the economic lungs of Quebec. And when you have the economic development department that is in charge, it's really send a strong signal that the business community is really ready to make the change. And the economic development, I will say it's the business unit within the city that it's more equipped to support those businesses and accompany this transition. Also, with the pandemic, a lot of supply issues were highlighted. So if we want to transform our economy through local production and things like that, we need to think of way to keep those materials that are already in circulation within our territory to stay on our territory. We need to find ways to make values of those materials. And finally, in addition to the great environmental value of the circular economy, it's a great addition to the GDP. If you just think in Montreal, just alone, the food waste is estimated at about 3.4 billion. And 1.1 billion of this waste could be avoided and re-inject in the GDP. So it could be very interesting. It's the economic development, but we don't do that alone, where we collaborate with other business units, for example, with the environment department that will more be to raise awareness to these citizens and to adopt some bylaws. And the procurement department also work with us. We have the building and management and planning department that will work, try to contribute to the exemplarity of the city through greater circularity work sites and things like that. And we also try to have an approach that is consistent with the other levels of government, with Grisé Quebec, and eventually we hope with the government of Canada and things like that. So in Montreal, we have a 3-part strategy for the circular economy. First, we want to develop and implement a circular economy roadmap to mobilize all the private, public, and institutional stakeholders around common objective and alignments. In the precedent panel, they weren't sure if the roadmap is important. I can say to you, yes. So that's the first part. After that, we also want to support the ecosystem in its transition. So act now and stimulate projects. Everything is going on in parallel on this 3-part strategy. And after that, we want to ensure an adequate and available funding for circular projects. So if you see the panel here today, it's our strategy. You have funding, you have support to businesses, we work with businesses, and you have the municipality that really send a strong signal. So it's very this. So this spring, Montreal submit to a vast public consultation our first roadmap for circularity, Montreal circular economy roadmap, sorry. And I'm very glad because it is the first specific circular economy planning document for the Montreal, and the mobilization was incredible. We received more than 100 opinions of all sorts of stakeholders, but majority of the business stakeholders. I haven't had the time to read it yet because it's just finished, but it's a gold mine of information, and it's all public. So if you want to go and see what people, it's in French, but you know, now you have Google that can translate, so a document, so it's really interesting. And in that, we have said that our vision is to achieve a circular rate of 17% by 2030. So how we think we can achieve this is by setting example, but also by maximizing all the levers we have at our disposition. So, for example, the procurement. We purchase more than $3 billion annually, the city of Montreal. So we're really one of the largest purchasers in the province of Quebec. So if we integrate those circular principles into our procurement process, we can really help the private sectors to change their way of doing by creating demands for those circular projects and services. We have a new sustainable procurement policy that has been adopted and that integrate those circularity criteria. We're working on an action plan, and in the action plan we have a lot of projects, and one of them is, for example, for the uniforms. How do you create circular loops around uniforms? You could say, oh, uniforms, it's small, but for Montreal it's 7 million per year on purchase, so it's a lot. We also work on regulations. It's another key lever. So we have adopted several regulations that promote the circular economy, in particular on plastic. We ban some single-use plastic products, and energy in large buildings. And we are now analyzing what we will do, but I think that food waste will be the next one that we will adopt. So we're really looking at the regulations that we could put in place and that could drive the market. We also work on tools and financial incentives. We collaborate with Fonds d'Action and Recycle Québec to launch the first circular economy fund in Canada. And we help with that. We try to help business from Montreal and the rest of Quebec to grow and to more scale those opportunities. And we also have programs that facilitate the collaboration with startups and well-established companies to implement circular economy solutions. We launch a call for, we have to think also about social economy, and we launched a call for proposal for social economy where we grant $1 million to 2 projects that will help us close the value chain in the textile and construction sectors. So that's just a few of the projects that are currently underway. And if you want to know why in Montreal it's going well and all of that, I will give you the secrets of the caramel. It's simple, it's collaboration, like you said, but also in Montreal we have a network of committed partners and stakeholders, and many of whom are here today. And those companies and entrepreneurs are leading the transformation of their sector. They're doing more than just their businesses, they're leading the way. And if you have the chance to speak with them, I encourage you. We have Still Good that is leading the way in biofood. We have Tengiva and Chroma in textiles. We have also Brick Recyc in the construction sector. Is not here today because today he was launching a website for he called it the tender of the bricks, to the reuse of the bricks. We have Cabri on him, Recyclage Lithium for the recycling of batteries, and go on and on. Sorry for those I didn't mention. And we also are supported by a strong research sector, like the CCES with Daniel. Daniel and I go a long way back because I was working before I, like my ex-colleague says, I went to the other side of the force. I was working in sustainable development, and I was working also, we were speaking like almost 10 years ago about circular economy and how we can do and accelerate that. I'm working with the Réseau Québécois en économie circulaire, CTTEI, all those people with Fonds d'Action, Québec. Like you see, it's really a way that everyone play their part, and public authorities have to play their part too. And I will do some circular economy myself and recycle a phrase that I heard last week in a panel from the CEO of Kruger, and he says, don't let perfection stand in the way of progress. And I think that's, if we want to scale circularity, that's what we have to do. We have to really start acting now and do the work, even if the regulation is not in place. Even if you miss something, you have to act really now to start the work.
Thank you so much. I've done some work in cities, so I know how hard it is to get a strategic roadmap in place. So congratulations on making that happen. Why do you think, you mentioned that work has been going on there for many years in Quebec and in Montreal, but what was it about the circular economy that captured the imagination of political folks to the point that you were able to have this be the focus and to create a roadmap? What was the factor, do you think?
I think they really saw the value. You know, if you see the landfill will be full, there's a lot of things to do, and they really saw the economic value and the environmental value, but they already saw what we can do together. You know, if you join forces, we don't have enough means to do it by ourselves. The city, we don't have enough money, don't have enough human resources, but we have all those challenges. And I think that, like I said, it's not just about GHG reduction. We have those big targets that we need to meet. And in order to meet, so the circular economy is really a great solution. So I think that's, they saw that, and they saw we were talking at the other panel also, one of the questions, you know, they saw the mobilization of the stakeholders that are going and talk to the elected officials and that are asking them to do something. I think that's what you need to do. We have to speak about it. And I'm lucky because now we will have a circular economy roadmap, and we did this public consultation, but just the mobilization of the people that, you know, small businesses write to us 10 pages memoir, and they're saying, that's what I'm doing, and that's what you need to do as a municipality, how you can help me to grow and to help you back. So,
thank you. That's a great segue. Georgia, tell us about the innovation sector and how you help grow circular businesses.
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Georgia Lavender. I am the Director of Program Operations for the Synergy Foundation, and we are a nonprofit that is based out of BC, and we're really dedicated to facilitating the transition to a green economy through our programming that we run. And we really feel that SMEs and these innovative entrepreneurs play a crucial role in accelerating the transition to a circular economy. We want to be able to support them in their endeavors through our work. And, you know, thinking of what are the ingredients for success on this panel today, you know, through our programming, and we've already heard it come up twice, for us, it's really been effective partnerships and collaboration. We can't do it on our own. You know, we hear that a lot. And it's really just been so crucial in us being able to work with more entrepreneurs, be able to work with more SMEs, and scale our programs across BC. So at Synergy, I have the privilege of leading our circular economy programming through an initiative called Project Zero, where we run an annual incubator program for startups that have a business idea that contributes to a circular economy. And they're often in the kind of ideation, concept development stages, so really early stage entrepreneurs for that program. And then over the past year and a half, we had the pleasure of working with the Vancouver Island Coast Economic Developers Association, or VICEDA for short, because that is a real mouthful, to develop a circular accelerator program. And for me, you know, being able to work with so many different partners on this program to create something really impactful for SMEs on the island. You had EDOs coming together from across the island, working with nonprofits, working with SMEs to create this vibrant circular ecosystem on Vancouver Island. It was really inspiring to see. And you know what we did with this accelerator program is we were working with businesses who were newer to the concepts of circularity. So their primary operations is not around the circular economy, but there's opportunities to integrate circular practices into their business model. And so we designed a program that allowed us to go in and work with 16 businesses through the pilot in manufacturing, construction, tourism and hospitality, food and beverage processing, and so on. And conduct these on-site assessments to get a better understanding of how their business is currently operating and what are some of their barriers and challenges to being able to advance some of these kind of circular initiatives. And so it was really also a capacity building program, and businesses, it was really inspiring to see, like, we don't know what we don't know, and we're open to learning, we're open to implementing new practices. Just tell us what to do and we'll figure out a way to do it. So that was a really fun space for us to play in, and we would provide these action plans for businesses, everything from low-hanging fruit, things that they could implement tomorrow, to more capital-intensive projects that will require funding and support. And as we were working through this program, we started to see a real connection between the incubator program that we run and the graduates coming out of that program and the businesses in this accelerator program. What we're finding is that these graduates from our incubator program were quickly becoming the solutions providers for the businesses in the accelerator program. And so one example I want to share of this is Ergo Eco Solutions. They went through our incubator program back in 2019, and they're a biodiesel company. They collect cooking oil, waste cooking oil from restaurants on Vancouver Island, and so we paired them with one of the brew pubs we were working with to collect their cooking oil. They take it back to the Cowichan Valley where they have their biodiesel refinery, and then they have a blending station that's open to the public. We were able to partner them with another business that's located near the blending station that has a diesel fleet, and they're now able to refuel with that biodiesel. And so that's just one of the many kind of connections that we were noticing through this program, but it was great to be able to facilitate those business-to-business partnerships as well. And so with that, I'd like to just share a little bit more about our incubator program. And so we've been running this program since 2019, and really using this as a way to support those entrepreneurs and giving them a safe space to test these circular business ideas. And since 2019, we've graduated 45 entrepreneurs who have gone on, or 45 ventures, sorry, who have gone on to create over 140 green jobs in BC. And we have another 15 ventures in our cohort this year. And this started as an initiative on Vancouver Island, and then we had demand from the Lower Mainland, so we worked with partners like the Vancouver Economic Commission to be able to offer this to more entrepreneurs, and demand grew, so now we offer it to entrepreneurs across BC, operating in all different areas of the circular economy, whether that's clean energy, waste to resource manufacturing, the repair economy, innovations to reduce waste right at the beginning, and so on. And so it's great to see the diversity of entrepreneurs and the real passion that's coming from the entrepreneurial community through their projects. And when we're bringing businesses into this program, I always say, you don't need to have a entrepreneurial background. You don't need to know a lot about business. On a great circular solution and the grit and determination to turn it into reality, we can build the business acumen through the program. But we wouldn't be able to do that without all of our partners. And so we have organizations like Van City Credit Union and the McConnell Foundation that allow us to offer this program free to all accepted ventures who are into the program. And so we're removing that financial barrier for participation. We don't take any equity in the ventures. We want to give them that safe space to be able to test the feasibility of their business model and prepare for launch. And then we have our other partners across the province who are helping us to reach entrepreneurs and communities that, as being headquartered in Victoria, we perhaps wouldn't have engaged with before. So reaching more entrepreneurs in the Kootenays or in the Thompson-Okanagan Valley to be able to provide more access to programs like this. We have partners who are donating their time as guest experts for our sessions, who are joining us as coaches to provide tailored support to the businesses in this program. And so I think it's just so key having those collaborative partnerships, and we all have the same goal we want to work towards. We don't need to reinvent the wheel, but we could work together. And so as we look to what the evolution of this Project Zero incubator program could be, we want to be able to support communities across Canada in running their own circular economy incubator programs. And so this is kind of our first time talking about this publicly as always being kind of based in BC, but we're really looking to work with other partner organizations across Canada who would like to offer something similar to the entrepreneurs in their community and work together through collaborative partnerships to be able to support their local entrepreneurs to drive economic growth and spur innovation in their communities. So I think I really want to finish by saying that, I really truly believe that by working together, we can support SMEs and entrepreneurs to create a powerful force for change.
Oh, there we go. That's wonderful. Thank you, Georgia. We experienced the same thing in Guelph when we were working on our food future in Coil around when you start to work with businesses from an incubation and an acceleration perspective. It's so magical seeing them connect across even different kind of supply chains and find ways to collaborate. Can you say more about what you think is involved in making that happen? Like, what were the ingredients that you put in place? I heard you talk about mentors from one group to another, but...
Yeah, absolutely. And one of my colleagues will laugh at me. I had a day where I was like, it's all in my head and I kind of need to figure out who's playing with who. So I got a giant poster sheet and a bunch of highlighters, and I started mind mapping it out. I was like, could you put this into Miro for me because I'm not as good at it? And she's like, that was all in your brain? And so I really think it's about us being able to share. We can't just have a few people who know who the connections are. Yeah. We have to be able to share that. And so it's like, okay, who else can I tell? Who else can I share this information with so that they can start building the connections and we can work more collaboratively through even our different industry associations that we have or through different membership groups that we have, and really just trying to disseminate that information as much as possible.
Yeah, and I don't think you, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think you get the same kind of interaction and catalytic kind of chains if you just work in one sector. The opportunities across sectors and supply chains, like in the case of investment.
Absolutely, and I think that's why I'm so grateful with both of the programs, on the accelerator side and on the incubator side. We're working in many different sectors, right? And I think, a lot of us have said, and you've probably heard this so many times, is we can't operate in silos or we're not going to be able to really accelerate this transition at scale. And what is a solution in one industry or one sector, can also prove that to be a solution in another. And even with Ergo, yes, they have their biodiesel blending station, but they also create a concrete form release agent. So now I compare all of my businesses that are working in the construction industry or even in the asphalt industry. One paving company we worked with is now going to use their concrete form release agent for all of their trucks and machinery that they use when they're out paving roads. And so it's being able to facilitate these types of connections to ensure that we're not working in silos.
Great.
Thank you.
Erik, give us the take it home by telling us from a different perspective, from an industry perspective. Tell us about the work that you're doing at Cascades.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. Sounds loud. Erik Grisé, Director of Circular Economy at Cascades, a Quebec-based company. For those of you who don't know, Cascades is vertically integrated across the life cycle of packaging. So we are collector, processor, recycler, and packaging manufacturer. So really at Cascades, it's really interesting for us, those kind of summit, those kind of discussion, because being vertically integrated is a great leverage for us to really leverage that expertise we have internally to design for circularity and design for recyclability. But also, it exposes us a lot to all those changes, right? Those changes in the regulation, either material bans on the city levels or EPR programs, or the labeling scheme on the government, Canadian side. But really, we are welcoming those changes with open arms. As innovator, I consider ourselves innovator on the eco-design side of the packagings. We build our businesses through entrepreneurship and on the basis of circularity. Our business was founded 60 years ago in Quebec by the Lavender brothers, who were one of the first to see value on fiber that they recovered when they were doing waste collection. And they started to do tests in the family kitchen with the kitchen blender, which was their first version of a pulper. And so they did tests in the house, and they opened one of the first mills that used recycled fiber in North America. At first, they had to lie to customer. Maybe I shouldn't say that, but they had to hide the fact that it was recycled fiber because people didn't want it at the time because it was deemed less quality. So really, our company, from the beginning, was built on entrepreneurship, vision, and circularity. Our mission is to give a second life to recyclable material. And through time, we materialized that. We now have 80 unit business unit across North America, being able to serve our customer from coast to coast in Canada, again, throughout the life cycle of packaging. And we have the biggest R&D center for fiber, private R&D center for fiber in Canada. So really, we are committed to innovation. So now, how does it take life into our day-to-day, right? Because when we develop new packaging innovation, the framework into which we design or build those innovations matters. Because when you get into a meeting with a customer, you have a nice new product and innovation in packaging. No matter the angle you take, no matter how nice the product is, you have to have one slide on your deck that is about the price, right? And sometimes it just don't match. Some innovation costs a little more, but that's the cost of sustainability sometimes. So that's where we feel that the framework has to give incentives to brand owner to really make the right choice. So either material ban on the sea level, but the new regulation that just came out about the recyclability labeling, which is a huge step forward in my opinion, because right now it feels like the whole system is shifting. We determined what we wanted. We wanted a more performant and sustainable system, but we have to start tracing line in the sand, right? What does it mean, recyclable versus recycled? What does it mean to be circular? If a packaging is recycled 80%, is it recyclable or not? So really, we're getting into the details. And again, the details matter and makes all the difference in the world. So it's still interesting right now because I feel like we're reaching that tipping point where before our team at the lab were absolute geeks about packaging, are creating new ideas, innovative packaging, and then they ship it to the sales team, and then they go sell it. We had an idea, we made it, go sell it. So sometimes it's tougher discussions when you get to that price slide on the deck, but right now what we're seeing is a shift. We're getting pulled into innovation with customer coming to us and asking us for circular solution. And that's where everything comes together, the framework and our capacity, our infrastructure. We're able to bring a team internally to answer those demands and provide solutions that consider all the value chain. I was astonished in the first few meetings I assisted at Cascade about recyclability. I used to consider myself an expert in recyclability, a little less now when I assist to those kind of meetings when you really have expert that does this day in, day out in the lab. And at the table, we had an expert in collection, someone who was managing our MRFs, so an expert in sorting, managing our mills, an expert in recycling, and managing our conversion plan. So really, we had the whole value chain at the same table, and it was all Cascaders. It was all internal brainstorming to find solutions for customer. So really, I think it's fun times, and it's fun times, and really great things are coming, and we are happy to be part of the chain. of the changes. And as you all said, it's all collaborative work, and we are there to support anyone.
Thank you. That's terrific. I was interested in what you said about now it's the customer that is creating the demand. And I think, all of our customers are different, whether it's corporations or businesses or the public. What do you think has changed? Like, why it's like the customer's out ahead now, dragging us along in some ways.
Yeah, I think there's still a little bit too much confusion about recyclability labeling. A lot of people are still confusing the plastic resin identification logo for recyclability. So I think there's still work to be done there, but there's encouraging steps that has been taken or proposed in the new regulation. What has changed is sometimes it's the material bans. They have to find solutions. So we come back to the city levels. It initiates demands and needs for circular solution. And really, regulation and the framework do drive changes. But you have to do it carefully. I do agree that you have to progress and that you don't have to that you have to stumble and stop for details. But when you can gather everyone that has expertise, that are subject matter expert and has the same vision, the same goal, I think you can move forward. And that's what we're seeing right now.
Natacha, you look like you were going to get in on that one. What would you say?
No, I was just saying that you can share what I was just telling you, because we did a ban on single-use plastic, and we work with the environmental department that were doing the assessment study on the environmental aspects, and we did an economic aspect of a study. And one of the things is that we couldn't ban something because there was only one solution in the market, and it was Cascade. And we were like, okay.
For the record, I didn't mind. She could have moved forward.
But it was a problem because at that time, we had only one solution. And if the biggest purchasers were going there, all the small SMEs and everyone wouldn't have the opportunity. So when he says that it's really important to work together, we told that we will eventually ban this article to the sector, but you have to listen to the market where it is now and give them some predictability so that we can adapt for tomorrow.
Thank you. Okay, so I have a question for the panelists, but all of you can either you can be thinking about a question, which you can put online. I'm monitoring the app, or you can raise your hand in a minute. My question is, it kind of goes back, I led the Smart City Challenge initiative in the city of Guelph to create a circular regional food system, agri-food system. And when we were trying to conceptualize that challenge, we were talking to all different sectors, people working in environment and people doing research and technology people and data people, so many people that all had their own perspective on it. And folks said to us, look, you can't do everything. Just pick one or two things that you can do. We resisted that and decided we were going to do everything, because that is really how you get to systems change. And in doing everything, you take a big risk for sure, but you also inspire the opportunities for things to take root and to flourish and to spread. And I like to use those terms rather than scale, because it just, it's more tangible to me. So the question I have for you is, if you had to pick, if you could maybe not do everything, but do more than one thing, what are like the top 3 things or enablers? You could also tell me the things that have to stop that are disincentives. What are the top 3 enablers that you think we have to make significant progress on in the next 12 months if we're really going to inspire, incentivize, catalyze the transition to a circular economy that has real meaningful impact for climate change and the environment? So I'm not going to go in order. Whoever wants to start can start, and you can also tell me about any things we have to stop doing or disincentives. Who wants to go? Natacha.
I think first what we need, it's the Canada and the province needs to adopt a strategy or a roadmap. So like I was just saying, to give some predictability. And so we have common alignments and goals. I think that's one of the things that we need to have strong alignments at the highest level to really push the market to change. We need to also, the awareness and building the skills. We have an initiative in Montreal that is very similar, Synergy Montreal, and they analyze more than, they're in action since 2016, and they analyze more than 1,000 of possible industrial symbioses, implement more than 200 of them, so that really helps us. And also I think, and it's the most important, I think, there are enough incentives to act, yet the cost of landfill or virgin materials are too low. So we really need to internalize the true cost of the energy, the materials, and the water. So I think that we need to find a way to really internalize that. And I will add another one, it's the data. So we need to find a way to have the data to know where we need to put our efforts first. So that will be about it.
Anyone else?
I can jump in. Listen, we've talked about the ecosystem, and there's different agents in the chain. I think one of the ways we could find, and it takes a little bit of political courage, but it also, I think industry 20, 30 years ago did not self-regulate, right? And I think that industry, or some industries or industry players of today, are demonstrating by their goals, and they're demonstrating by their ambitions. And Cascade, the gentleman at the end of the panel, Cascade has had a history of innovation and a tradition of innovation. So we commend players like Cascade in Canada and globally. I think the concept of what's known, and this is a concept that's used in some of the states in the US, which is the concept of extending the producer responsibility. So if you're producing a good, or you're producing packaging, or you're producing containers, and they come from, let's just say, a less biodegradable feedstock, not to name what sector that could be. Well, if you were to be allowed to sell your products that are not necessarily biodegradable in a given jurisdiction, well, maybe to have the right to sell that product, call it packaging, call it a container, well, maybe you need to invest in the infrastructure to recycle that product at the end of its life, right? So you want to sell product in Quebec, or you want to sell product or packaging in Canada, well, you're going to need, as a responsible economic agent, industrial player of a great name, or great, in packaging generally, or consumer packaged goods, well, you're going to need to directly invest in the infrastructure to recycle your product and similar products alike. So that's one of the ways you're extending the responsibility. So it's not all about government and municipalities. So the right players, if you instill that kind of regulation, they'll say, okay, well, I'm going to need to have an innovation strategy. I'm going to need to supplement my spend or my budget and invest in the infrastructure, so that at the end of life of the product, we have the infrastructure collectively to recycle such a product. So that's one of the ways by which I think that would make a significant impact.
That's really important, and I think the signals to the marketplace that government can send, whether it's the federal, provincial, or city governments, can't be underestimated. And similarly, the signals that corporations and industry send to their supply chains and to the broader value chains and system are really important. Erik, do you want to respond to that? And as you're doing that, there's a question, do you have internal zero waste targets at Cascade?
Absolutely, and we have a target for packaging. By 2030, 100% of our packaging will be either recyclable or compostable, and we are already at 93% for that target, so we're almost there. We're always aiming for the zero waste. absolutely. There's some waste in our process that is harder to manage, and sometimes there's no end markets for some materials. So in some instances, since we have also MRFs, sorting operations, we kind of rely on the markets for some product where we don't consume it inside our operations. But we do have aggressive targets for the ESG in general. And to come back to your question, what we should do in the next 12 months, for me, it's all about the framework. Right now, again, we're tracing a line, putting a line in the sand to what's recycled, what's recyclable, what's recyclability, what's circularity. And again, all the devil's in the details, going to the granularity of the material category that are in the targets or the EPR fees, or for the recyclability assessment. It does all the difference when in the real world you go to assess your packaging, then communicate to the consumer. So being able to, even if you have, I feel like even if you lower the expectation on the targets, you have lower percentage, and I know that politically it's less sexy, but as long as the framework allows the consumer and the brand owner to make the choice, knowing that it's the right choice, knowing that when they choose a recyclable packaging, it gets recycled, will eventually make all the difference in the world.
Mm-hmm. Georgia, anything from your perspective?
Absolutely. I think, as we're looking, what do we need over the next 12 months? We've talked about the need for collaboration, but I think knowledge and resource sharing especially. And we want to ensure that all of us in this room are really familiar with the concepts of circularity. Well, this is the work we live and breathe every day. There's so many businesses out there that want to make a change. They want to do the right thing, but they don't know where to start. And so we need to make sure that we're bringing those SMEs along that journey with us. And we need to make sure that we're also providing those entrepreneurs, those startups with the supports so that they can be those solutions providers. And Krista touched on this in the panel earlier, but especially in our urban centers, the lack of industrial zoned land, especially light, that light industrial land. It's a real struggle for us, in Victoria as well, where we're at. And a lot of the times these entrepreneurs, they don't need a massive space. They need a few hundred square feet to get started until they're operating at scale. And so finding ways that, as policymakers, this was something that was put forward by one of our councillors in Victoria for our new economic development plan, was how can we conserve light industrial space and ensure that it's being used for sustainable innovation and creating those opportunities for the entrepreneurs in our community. So looking at those types of opportunities as well to ensure that everyone's being brought along in this transition.
Great, thank you. Well, I think we're at time, and I want to speak to one last important ingredient in success. And it is really something we don't often think about because we're all so busy doing the work. It's the leadership of people like you on the panel from your different sectors. So I want to thank you, and it's the leadership of people in this room. So thank you very much for being here today and for sharing your insights.
Thank you.
Thank you.